The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Therapy Podcast. I'm Julian Schroeder, and I'm riding solo today in terms of hosting. Our other lovely hosts, Whitney Bunch and JC Rader, are off gallivanting in Banff National Park. Right?
Just slightly jealous.
Right? Like, that must be a rough life. They've been sending me photos of, I don't know, have you seen like Lake Louise? So, I mean, just like beautiful turquoise blue waters, you know. I'm not upset at all. No. Anyways, Whitney, JC, and myself are all at White Rock Counseling, and Whitney's in San Antonio. JC and I are in the Dallas office, and we offer online services for the right types of clients, and we also do therapeutic yoga as well. We are so excited that you're tuning in today to hear us therapists share tips, stories, and inspiration to help you create positive change in your everyday therapy life. Yeah. And enough of that intro, because I'm so excited and thankful to have friend and colleague here with me today, Angela Pryor. You can say hi.
Hello.
She is not only an awesome human being, therapist, yoga teacher, and intuitive eating counselor. She's a good soul. Yeah.
What an intro.
But do you want to share a little bit more about yourself? I mean, I just said the credentials, but
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello everyone in podcast world. I'm Angela, and so I am a whole bunch of things. So I'm a clinical social worker. I'm a registered yoga teacher. I'm also a certified intuitive eating counselor. My husband jokes that I really like school, so I have a tendency to just like keep getting certifications.
Yeah. Why not add like the alphabet to the end
Yeah,
of your name?
Exactly. Love it. So I'm in private practice, and my practice is my name, Angela Pryor. And you can find me at angelapryor.com. And I work with adults who are just mainly looking to embrace these messy, beautiful, uncomfortable things we call feelings. You know,
Those
and
things.
really moving away from everything that we can do to try to avoid them. Right? Because there's just some things that just don't feel great.
Yeah.
So those are my people. They're just, looking to embrace something that doesn't feel super great all the time, which can be so difficult.
Sure.
And doing that through self-compassion and radical acceptance. And I absolutely intertwine yoga in most of my therapy sessions, whether it's through gentle movement, meditation, mindfulness, breathing work. And then within, individuals looking to embrace their messy, beautiful feelings, I also specialize with eating disorders as well as disordered eating. And we can talk a little bit about the difference, and then anxiety.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's why, I mean, you're obviously the perfect fit for a lot of things, but especially for today's everyday therapy topic, which is intuitive eating. And if we get time, we're going to talk a little bit about the health at every size movement. But there's just so much to cover with intuitive eating. And
Absolutely.
Right. So how about we just start there? Like, let's really look at, I mean, how do you define intuitive eating? How'd you get into it?
So, honestly, the definition I tend to gravitate towards, which is big part, mainly my own. But intuitive eating is basically hitting the reset button and going back to our default settings. So
say more about that.
yeah. So, well, let's first talk about diet culture.
Oh,
because I don't know if
we might have to put a time limit on this, though.
Because I don't know if we can totally dive in without just kind of talking about what the heck is diet culture.
Yeah.
So, diet culture is essentially a big part of the culture that we all live in right now, in regards to that we all should be eating a specific way, whether it's because we need to lose weight or very specifically for our health, which gets a little tricky and messy. Sure. But diet culture is essentially this idea that we need to be different, we need to be smaller, we need to eat less.
Yeah. Or be fitter if you're a guy.
Right? Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. And fitness culture is a subpart of diet culture. So right. So whether it's all like bodybuilding and growing all the muscles and eating a very specific way, but diet culture is a big part of the diet industry, which is a $62 billion a year industry. So it essentially just makes money off of the premise that you are not enough as you are. And we have the answer. And that answer includes probably weight loss. And, I'll just speak a little bit, from my own perception. I dieted for years. And, and I don't know if there's really someone out there who just intuitively hasn't.
Right. Yeah.
At this point in the game.
No
I'll
kidding.
put it that way.
Yeah.
So it's definitely pervasive, right?
For
Even
sure.
if it's just, let me count calories or let me, eat this meal, like diet plan or a specific
like
meal
Atkins,
plan.
or Slim Fast, paleo, keto, whatever. Yeah.
All of the above.
And I think it's important. I'm glad that you're sharing some numbers and statistics throughout, just to like bring awareness to like the gravity of the problem. Like, the fact that most of us have dieted, specifically like by I think it's 18, like 80% of girls specifically have been on some sort of diet, right?
Yeah. And then to even take that a little further, NITA put out some statistics that I believe it's 1 in 4 dieters will develop an eating disorder in their lifetime. So that's pretty, shocking if you think about that. 1 in 4.
Yeah.
Think about your friends group.
Yeah.
You probably have at least 4 friends that have been dieting.
Yeah. No, that's 25%. And when there are a lot of complications from eating disorders, that's not something to take lightly.
Yeah,
Right.
and so if we're kind of talking about dieting and losing weight and eating a certain way, exercising a certain way, feeling that you have to exercise or you can only eat something if you exercise or saving up all the calories for a cheat day.
Oh God. just let's can we talk about that at some point and why that's just failure written all over it.
Yeah. So intuitive eating is a approach. It's not a diet. It's an evidence-based model or approach. Brought my book.
Look at we both have our books here, which, by the way, we were giving this away on our Instagram, and there's still time. So if anybody happens to be listening or watching, you can hop onto our Instagram, look for this post, and anyways, just because it's some really awesome, necessary stuff in here.
Yeah, it's one of those books where when I read it, my jaw just kept like hitting the floor over and over again, and I've had many clients basically report the same thing, like, oh my God, where has this been? Oh my gosh, this is like blowing my mind kind of conversations. So basically, intuitive eating was developed by 2 dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elyse Resch, back in 1995. I think the first copy was released. So it's actually been around for a long time, at this point, over 20 years. Yeah. Which is sort of shocking when you think about that.
Yeah. And I wonder what in like 1995, what diet, like probably the low carb phase, do you think?
Yeah.
Or I don't know.
A lot of like Atkins stuff. Yeah. And what's really interesting, so as a certified intuitive eating counselor, I trained directly with Evelyn over a period of about almost a year. So whether it was through webinars, online training, as well as direct group coaching with her, which was amazing. And she really talks about the story, and it's in the book, but she talks about how basically as a dietitian in the 80s and the early 90s, she would be working with people that would be coming to her for weight loss. And they do all the right things. They do a meal plan, they do, you know, calorie countings, they do nutrition, all this stuff. And of course, they would be successful for a period of time. So then, you know, they met their goals and they finish what they're doing and they go about their life and they go about their business. And then about 6 months, 9 months, a year later, they start calling. I did it again. I need help. I messed up. And that language, so filled with guilt, like somehow they did something wrong. Yep.
Like, I feel like I have no self-control. I'm lazy.
I'm worthless. And Evelyn and Elyse separately, so they're working in their own practices at this point, haven't met each other, start to realize, we got to do something, like this isn't working. Something, like this isn't working. And then they dived into the research. They later met up, teamed up, and hence intuitive eating was born. But basically coming to the research that was existing even in the late 80s and early 90s, that diets don't work.
Yeah, it's like a 96% fail rate, right?
95, yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, then it's like, well, what's that other 5% doing? And, you know, there's some question of, do they just, you know, how disordered does it get?
Sure.
But yeah, 95% fail. So if just for a second, if you were to think of any other industry who had a 95% fail rate, I don't know if we'd be looking at that as successful. We're pouring $62 billion a year into it.
Right? Oh, that kind of just...
Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so coming back to intuitive eating, and my definition of basically just hitting the reset button is everyone was born knowing how to feed themselves, right? Just take for a moment just to think about when you've been around a baby the last time. Babies cry when they're hungry. They stop when they're full. And toddlers will try new things, and sometimes they don't like it, and sometimes they only want to try one thing, but at some point they move on, even if all they want to eat is mac and cheese for, you know, like 3 months. But we all were born and came into this world knowing how to feed ourselves. And then it's this concept of, well, you need to eat everything that's on your plate. There's starving children in Africa. You should eat less. Why are you eating so much? Don't eat as much candy. Or let's not have candy in the house because that's bad, or sugar's bad, or, you know, gluten's bad right now. You know, there's lots of...
dairy.
Yeah, dairy. There's I eat it all.
Yeah, she's, for those that are listening, please, okay, show me. It says, I eat dairy-free, I eat gluten-free, I eat sugar-free, I eat carb-free, and then it's all crossed out, and then it just says, I eat. Oh my gosh, thank you.
And of course, like, there are, and we'll talk about intuitive eating and allergies, because there are some people with celiac disease, with Crohn's, with certain types of disorders that actually can't eat some of that stuff. So I just want to throw that out there.
Sure, yes. We're not like getting down on those people that are doing it for true, valid health reasons.
Well, and truthfully, they're being intuitive, because if you have celiac disease and you eat gluten, you're going to be so sick. That's not going to feel good. So don't do that, right? Which is essentially intuitive eating. And Evelyn Tribole's son has celiac disease.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and she has many, like, articles, and even does, you know, online and in-person private practice still, and specializes in individuals with celiac disease and other allergies and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, because that's something I get a lot, at least on Instagram, is like, well, what about this, or what about that?
Yeah,
and,
like if you're taking
just want to
care
throw
of
that out there.
Yeah, taking care of you.
Yeah.
And there's like real proof.
Yeah, like you've gone to the doctor, you've had medical tests, I'm just trying to, like, not eat certain things because I'm trying to figure out on my own, or with, you know, my health coach who maybe isn't a registered dietitian.
Sure.
These things. So anyway.
Yeah, because also, I wonder too, like there's a kind of a movement for like anti-inflammatory foods, right? And how do you, so what I'm hearing is that you just recommend going to a professional who can really help you tease out, and then,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so we can talk more about that too, because absolutely, I always recommend if you're struggling at all with your relationship with food, reaching out to whether it's an intuitive eating trained dietitian. So right now there's the non-diet dietitians.
I love that. Yeah.
Or a intuitive eating counselor, intuitive eating therapist, eating disorder therapist. So someone who has just a little bit extra knowledge in regards to food and what that means as far as your health and well-being.
Sure. Can I jump in and say something real quick as far as, because some people can stop the dieting and that just based on whether it's natural personality characteristics or coming to some sort of education and really being able to do this and ready for the work of intuitive eating. Some based on experiences and maybe just the way that they've lived might need just a little extra support. That's okay. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This stuff is hard. Right?
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life is to like swap into or move away from dieting into intuitive eating. I'm a therapist here who's supposed to have it all together, and I worked with my own intuitive eating.
I don't have it together yet. Don't give people false illusions.
Quote unquote, I'm supposed to have it all together. No, and I worked with a intuitive eating dietitian. I actually worked with, just going to give a little plug to Kylie Mitchell from I'ma Eat That. If you guys don't follow that blog, you should. She's amazing. And just having that little extra support of understanding of like, hey, like, let's just be curious with what we're eating and why. So kind of coming back to this concept of what is intuitive eating.
Yeah.
So if we think that as children, as babies, we all knew how to eat, then that's where we need to get back to. It's a lot of unlearning, a lot of messages and rules that we have been taught over, our lifetime. And at this point, I think it's pretty also important to recognize and build empathy that diet culture has been pervasive for decades upon decades. Definitely starting in the 70s is when the word diet started showing up on food. They started taking fat out of a lot of like processed meals and things like that. But, I've seen online where people have pulled old advertisements from back in like the 40s and 30s that were like talking about a scale or talking about, sugar or talking about, and women being a certain size and needing to be a certain size. So, diet culture is pervasive and it's not something that's brand new. So,
just the messaging, I think maybe has gotten even a little bit more creative, right?
Yes.
Because also, maybe I'm opening up a can of worms.
No.
You could tell me to put it away and we can discuss that. But even now there seems like the current trend is the macronutrients, right? And I don't know.
The wellness diet.
And so, but it still seems like there's a lot of overlap where there could be, a big part of this is the rigidity, right? That moves us away from intuitive eating and into really not learning how to trust ourselves in our body, and then creates those like intense feelings of shame and guilt for not following the rules, right?
And inflexibility, right?
Yeah.
Like just an inflexibility of, how to spend your time, right?
Yeah.
Are you not going to be able to eat at a certain restaurant with your friends because they don't have the, quote unquote clean diet that you're eating, or, certain macro, like maybe it's like heavier macro dense food and not like light micro or whatever. Are you going to avoid those things, right? Are you going to miss out on certain experiences? So,
and to be fair, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're okay.
I like to instigate and then come back around. Anyways, I was talking with someone who is on the macronutrient, and she was doing it for a short time and was able, she said, when I go out with others, I'm making sure that like that doesn't overtake like the fact that my family and I are going out for dinner. So, I mean, I think it's kind of dangerous territory for some personalities because not everybody can go towards a more kind of rigid view of eating and then step back. But maybe some can. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, so we're essentially talking about, so intuitive eating has 10 principles, and we're basically talking about principle 1, which is reject the diet mentality right now. And, you know, whenever I think about any kind of restriction, which is essentially eating a certain way because you feel like you should or someone told you to, like whether that's eating macros or cutting back calories or, you know, eating keto or whatever that looks like. I like to use the word restriction because maybe if we took all that away, that those wouldn't be the food choices you would make. Maybe they would be. But it just tends to lend itself to a risk of feeling like there's restriction. So the diet binge cycle, and even if, you know, and I think it's important that we clarify a little bit about binges because we tend to throw that word around a lot right now in our culture.
Yeah, Netflix binging.
Yeah.
I was planning to do that too.
Yeah. And I know that, you know, even as a therapist, you know, I used to think of binges as being this really extreme experience, like literally eating everything in the kitchen but the kitchen sink, like, you know, like at night, totally in secret, like really intensely. It's come a little bit out of the shadows recently because of cheat days or of, you know, I'm like I'm going to put it on Instagram that I'm going to binge or, you know, like there's definitely, it's sort of like oddly come out of the shadows a little bit recently. But binging is really eating more in one sitting than like your body may like or would want. And generally you feel sick afterwards.
Sure. Yeah,
so it's that
out of control and
guilt, shame, feeling stuffed, or even if you, like that really sick, full feeling. So maybe it's not eating everything in the pantry, but maybe you ate the entire package of Oreo cookies and that didn't make you feel good. You know, that's essentially part of this like overeating binge cycle that we can see with the diet binge cycle. Now that's a little different than binge eating disorder. And I just want to put that out there because that's also, at least in our world, is being talked about right now. But I think it's important to just kind of normalize some of or give some more background on like when we say these things, this is what we mean.
Sure. Yeah. No, thanks for that clarification.
You know, so just lending itself to lots of overeating or moments of feeling out of control, and that just doesn't feel good because when we look at health and wellness, and I think it's important to point this out that sometimes we can get really focused on the physical health aspect. So, you know, eating very, you know, what we would consider to be quote unquote nutritious food and kind of forgetting about our other forms of health, which include emotional and mental. So if it's making you feel very rigid or anxious or anxious in the sense that you're at the grocery store and it takes you, you know, an hour to grocery shop because you keep reading everything, right? And like, oh, which one do I get? Which one do I get?
Yeah,
and
that mental back and forth, tug of war. Oh,
yeah, right?
Such like obsessional fixation.
Yeah, right. and guilt and shame and just, you know, feeling isolated. And I think part of what we're talking about is also what's the difference between an eating disorder and disordered eating. And I like to think about disordered or just like eating, a relationship with food, like on a continuum. And, you know, kind of backing up a lot of what intuitive eating talks about is that if you're dieting, you're falling on the continuum somewhere, right? So perhaps at one end is dieting on occasion, occasionally restricting calories, not feeling super obsessive about it. And then
like maybe for anticipating like an event, like a wedding or I don't know, like bikini season or those are some common things. Yeah. And then you're able to pull yourself out of it.
Yeah. Basically. Okay. And then, you know, maybe as we move along the continuum, it's becomes more of I'm going to try this diet, then I'm going to try this diet. I'm going to do this for 12 weeks, or I'm going to do this for 10 weeks, or I'm going to really commit to this. And then 2 weeks later, you fall off the wagon, and then you're back on. And, right, it's like this long habitual cycle, essentially. And then as you keep moving down the continuum, you might come into this place where, like, it's a lifestyle. This is how I eat. Lifestyle is a big word right now in the dieting community. And of course, this is not to shame anyone.
You're right.
You know, like, and I'll come back to that in a second. But so kind of hanging out in this place of dieting continuously, where it begins to feel a little bit more rigid, a little bit more obsessive. Like, I can't not eat this way.
Sure. Yeah, so if I don't have my tilapia, like, what am I going to do? Like, then I'm just not going to eat any protein.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, basically. Or, you know, or just being really inflexible unless you have the permission of a cheat day. And then, you know, the more the obsession kicks in, the more anxiety that's involved, the more guilt and shame, the further we progress into, you know, eating disorder territory. So it's not so black and white as much as it's really this, like, sliding grayscale.
And, like, we as humans don't really typically do well in the gray, right? So we want rules, we want certainty to know, like, what's next, how are we performing, etc. So hence why intuitive eating is hard, but there are some principles, right? So we're talking about rejecting the diet mentality. Do you think that, like, we can move from that and then discuss the other?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, because we could talk about diets all day, right?
I could do this for 8 hours, but so honor your hunger is principle 2. So a big part of why, though, it's important to talk about diet mentality to begin with is it's very pervasive. It's way in our face, and that's the hard part. That is, like, the hard part of this, is how to be like, I'm not going to do that anymore, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and it's not because I've failed. The diet's failed you. You have not failed the diet.
Absolutely. So honor your hunger. And this is a big part of coming back to this, like, reset default. Like, I don't have to eat at very specific times of day. I don't have to eat measured out food.
I can eat food at night?
Yeah.
Are you telling me I can do that?
If you're hungry and it's 11 p.m., go eat something. Honor your hunger. So essentially this is keeping your body biologically fed with adequate energy and carbohydrates.
Ooh, because carbs are, like, the evil ones, right?
Otherwise, you can trigger a primal drive to overeat. And I think that's a big part of that out of control feeling that, you know that I have experienced in the past, and lots of my clients talk about, or even just my friends, just feeling kind of like, I can't trust myself with this type of food, so I can't even allow it in the house. And that's the out of control feeling that comes from restriction. So when we start to honor our bodies, when we start to honor our hunger, when we begin to reconnect with when I am hungry, when you are hungry, you know, is my belly growling? Am I feeling a little lightheaded? Am I starting to feel a little irritable? Am I tired? These are all just examples of what hunger could feel like. And, you know, I always like to bring it back to, you know, another biological, like, urge would be to use the bathroom. So, like, so there may be periods of time where you can hold your urine and not have to, like, run to the bathroom.
I mean,
I'm
ask
getting
me
graphic
about my
now.
last job.
Right? Like,
was not healthy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, like, you do that, right?
Yeah.
But
we're not. Yeah.
But
there
comes a point when it doesn't feel good anymore, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get to the bathroom right now.
Right.
And we don't necessarily do that all day long.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that might happen, like, I'm stuck in the car.
Yeah.
Or it might happen because of something's going on at work.
Like some external circumstances, right?
But day to day, normally if we have to use the bathroom, we go use the bathroom. Right. And we don't lace it with a lot of judgment and shame and guilt of something's bad about me using the bathroom now and not waiting until, like, 12 p.m. on the dot to use the bathroom. So because this is biological, we can't control when we feel hungry or not. Like, our bodies need energy, and that's what food does for us.
Sure. So, I mean, I've heard, once again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I like to do that. So, you know, the rules of thumb of, like, 3 to 4 hours you should be eating
so
to fuel yourself. Is that?
Yeah. So that's just, so coming back to wellness, the wellness diet has kind of hijacked some really basic things about metabolism that we do know that science does tell us. And when you're beginning to reconnect with your hunger and your fullness cues, especially if you have a long history of chronic dieting or an eating disorder, that can be really, really difficult because you have no idea what full feels like, and you have no idea like what comfortably full feels like, and you have no idea what like hungry, not ravenous feels like.
You just don't have a good gauge on that.
Yeah, like, and that's just part of what happens during restriction. Some of that gets broken. So through the healing of that, it can be helpful to sometimes keep in the back of your mind, like, hey, have I eaten? It's been 3 hours. What's going on with my body? Because that's just generally what we know about metabolism.
Sure.
But once again, at some point, this is individualized, and you might not feel hungry every 3 to 4 hours, especially depending on what you're doing. Or you may feel hungry in an hour and a half, not 3. And that's okay. You can eat something. So I think that that's the big piece here is these are suggestions, not rules.
Sure. Yeah, knowing that there can be some fluctuation day to day even, right? So, like, some days you might be hungry and you eat more, other days not.
Well, yeah, and if you've, depending what's been going on with your activity too.
Right.
Like if you had a really busy day and you moved a lot, you're probably going to need more food.
Yeah.
That's okay.
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely going to order some pizza.
Yeah, so, and then make peace with food. This is principle 3. So call a truce. You can stop the food fight. Give yourself unconditional permission to eat. So how hard is that? Unconditional permission to just eat whatever. And this is the piece that I think can get even a little extra, I don't know, people can get upset with it. So here's the thing. Evelyn and Elyse are dietitians. They care a lot about nutrition, but there's a reason why gentle nutrition isn't even talked about until like principle 10.
And gentle nutrition, we'll get to it.
Yes.
But like just taking into account, like I think what you're about to say, if I can mind read, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
We're on the same wavelength.
Right?
I know it.
Is that we're not, intuitive eating doesn't mean eat pizza and donuts and chocolate all the time and neglect eating foods that really do help your body function efficiently, right?
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
Not,
But sometimes in the very early stages of intuitive eating, the things that have been restricted the most, the types of food that have been restricted the most, generally tend to be these really palatable foods, which are higher in sugar, higher in carbohydrates, whatever, which are the donuts, which are the pizza, which is the candy, or the pop. I'm from Ohio, so soda, cocoa, whatever you want to call it.
So from Wyoming, I appreciate the pop. I feel like I forgot about that. Anyways, okay.
So, but those tend to be the types of food that have been restricted, not the kale. So giving yourself the permission to eat all of those types of foods is what begins to move you down the journey of actually healing the relationship with those foods. Because here's the thing, when you have permission to eat them all the time, at some point habituation kicks in and you're not going to want them all the time. That's the really cool thing about our bodies. They know what to do.
If we learn to trust.
Yeah, which is the hard, scary part.
Yeah, absolutely.
But making peace with food. So getting rid of all of the rules, allowing yourself to really connect with the cravings and notice that, you know what? You may overeat on some of these things.
Like Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Or like if you haven't had permission to eat donuts in years, you will probably overeat on donuts, and that's okay because this isn't the hunger full diet. This is let's begin to make peace with food and begin to honor what our body wants and what our body is telling us.
Sure. And so trusting that, okay, moving into this is hard. And so when you're learning to make peace with your food and that being a really difficult principle, like knowing that, okay, trust the process. So you overeat, but you don't go back into the restriction cycle. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So a food for me that I had to make peace with was Pop-Tarts.
Gosh, blast from the past.
So I loved me Pop-Tarts and then decided that they were not quote unquote healthy for me. They were too high in calories, whatever you want to say, but I just quit eating them for years and years and years. And then when I was working through Make Peace with Food and making peace with, some of these foods that I were on my like bad list, because that's the other thing. We put foods on good and bad lists. Pop-Tarts were on my bad list.
And you were bad for eating the Pop-Tart.
So to move them away from this good, bad, black and white kind of concept and into gray and neutral. Neutrality is a beautiful thing, everyone.
So it's a Pop-Tart.
Yeah. I ate a lot of Pop-Tarts. Like a lot. Like sometimes 2 to 3 packages a day.
Okay. But that didn't make you any worse of a
Nope.
person or any
Not
better
at
of a
all.
person. It just made you a person who liked to eat Pop-Tarts.
Yep. And I did that for several months. And then at some point, I just quit buying them. They just somehow weren't on the grocery list. And not out of a place of restriction. They just weren't. And you know what? If I really wanted a Pop-Tart right now, I'd go get one. But I don't. And that's okay, because that's just where I moved through that process. It doesn't hold power over me. It's no longer an out-of-control food. It's no longer scary. It's just a Pop-Tart.
It's just a Pop-Tart. Thanks so much for sharing. Because, yes, I hope anybody's listening and who's ever had any of these struggles knowing that, like, this process, like, there's a lot of compassion that's needed through it.
Yeah.
Right?
And, kind of coming, what I want to just touch on, as not to shame anyone who may still be dieting, I've seen some memes out there in Instagram world about like, I don't care about your diet, or I don't want to hear about your diet, or things like that.
Yeah.
No, like I really do care about your diet, and I want to hear about what it's doing for you, and how it's serving you, and how it's not serving you, and what is that whole experience like. And for some, that's where they want to stay, and others are like, I want to do something different. I'm really tired of this.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you being able to look from that therapist perspective of like, okay, why are you attached to this? Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And principle 4 then is challenge the food police. So if you've looked at certain foods as good or bad for a really long time, and that may just be microdense versus macrodense or whatever, but if you've had food in certain categories for a long time, there's going to be what we call the food police running around in your mind, which is a no, don't eat that. You shouldn't eat that. That is bad. Have you worked out today? You can eat that, but only if you go to the gym or whatever. Or no, I have to wait till Saturday, which is my cheat day, to do that. So that's the food police talking, and it's not very helpful because it creates a lot of anxiety, shame, and guilt. And sometimes food police can also be external, like loved ones around us. And it's in your right to set that boundary to say, no, like this is what my body needs. This is what I need to eat right now.
Yeah. Or this is what I want, and that can be okay.
Yeah. And when you begin to challenge the food police, you also have time to develop your food anthropologist, which is a big part of intuitive eating.
Yeah. Tell me, what's this role of the food anthropologist?
It remembers what felt good and what didn't. So, for example, there was so coffee. I love coffee, but I can't drink it all day long or have usually more than 1 cup a day because it A, will make me anxious, and B, it also gives me heartburn.
Ew.
So there was a period of time when like I couldn't tap into that, and it felt restrictive to not drink all the coffee with all the milk and all the lattes in the world. And now I drink my 1 cup of coffee in the morning because I know that if I have it after 4, I'm not going to sleep very well at night. Or if I have it, if I drink too many cups of coffee, I'm going to feel really anxious. It's kind of the same thing, like if you eat a pint of ice cream, your stomach might hurt. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the dairy, or maybe it does, but your food anthropologist lets you know. It lets you know that, oh, you're going to go work out. You probably should eat something before you work out. Oh, you're going to, so you're going to an event after work, and dinner's not going to be till 8 p.m., but it's 4 p.m. and you're hungry now. So what if you ate something in between, and what could that be? Right? So your food anthropologist lets you know, like, hey, like this feels good, this tastes good. Oh, this will help get me from point A to point B.
Just a lot of wisdom,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And to do that and develop that, you have to tell the food police no.
Yes. So away from the shoulds, away from what you've been taught most likely.
Yeah.
Right. And
Absolutely. And then respect your fullness. And then if you notice, hunger was first, fullness is several principles later.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out.
Because I think we can get really cued into like respecting the fullness cue and forgetting about the hunger cue. So it's way easier to respect your body's fullness signals when you aren't ravenous, when you aren't starved, when you've been feeding your body throughout the day. So for example, let's say you had lunch, but then you ended up not having a snack, and now it's 8 p.m. at this event, and you're so hungry, your stomach's growling, maybe you're even a little lightheaded, and you're like, I'm so hungry. And then you see the snack table, and then you just stand by the snack table, just like eating all the food, right? That's gonna lend itself to probably overeating and feeling overly full, or maybe even sick full. And a big part of that was primal hunger kicked in, and you were ravenous and you were starving. And our bodies are so smart. Our bodies are completely built to protect us against famine and starvation. So your body's like, we don't know when you're going to eat again.
So let me eat it all.
Let's just keep going.
Sure.
Right? And that's the big part of that. So when we start honoring our hunger, then we can start honoring our fullness that much easier. So easily.
Sure.
Yeah. So coming, like what is a comfortable level of fullness for you? Like it's hard to describe because it's almost like trying to describe like what the color blue looks like to someone, who's never seen it before.
Individualized.
Yeah.
Right. But maybe like on a scale of 1 to 10, like a comfortable full might be for you kind of more on like the 7.
Yeah, like the 4.
Oh, 4.
Well, I'm sorry. 5. So like if like 0 is like empty, 1 is ravenous.
Okay.
2, 3, 2 starving. 3, 4 is like I need to eat. 5 is neutral. So like 5, like I would say like perhaps 6 or 7. 5, 6 or 7. Right?
Okay. Depending where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay.
And depending what that feels right for you. I actually, I would say that for me, how I describe it in my body is just like my stomach feels slightly full. That empty feeling's gone. The gnawing hunger in my stomach is gone. Maybe I feel a little energized, or maybe I even feel just a tad bit sleepy.
Sure.
Just depending on what's going on. But yeah, that's how it feels for me, and it just feels sort of like comfortable.
So comfortable, not like post-Thanksgiving dinner full.
Yeah,
right?
no.
Yeah, I'm finding those.
Yeah. Or not making the so full,
right?
Kind of like conversation.
Sure.
that we hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Angela, we have so much to cover, and I am just noticing time.
Okay.
But I'm wondering, we can probably list some principles. I don't know if you want to list, and then do you want to choose one more that you think is really important for listeners to really dive into, and then we'll move into some questions from our audience.
Yeah, so 6 is discover the satisfaction factor. 7 is honor your feelings without using food. 8 is respect your body. 9 is exercise, feel the difference. And 10 is honor your health. I think perhaps respecting your body might be something to spend a little time on.
Sure.
So respecting your body is basically accepting your genetic blueprint. That just, for example, your shoe size might be a size 8. You wouldn't try to put your size 8 foot into a size 6 shoe.
I just posted that on my Instagram.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
forget which account I put that on. But no.
So just like respecting like our bodies were all built from our like family history.
Yes.
And our ancestors, and some of us have, the body size and diversity has always existed. It's not something new.
Right. Right. But then the media, we have narrowed down what is supposed to be. I mean, and we're working through that. But I love that. I love that analogy too. Okay, you can't change the size of your of your shoe.
Well, and like feet, I'm 5 foot. Maybe I wish I was 5'5", but I'm not, and that's okay.
Yeah. No.
So just like honoring your body, respecting your body.
Yeah. And maybe finding some like gratitude. That's something that I work with clients about. So I will share that I haven't always had a loving relationship with my body, and particularly my legs. And now I like shift into this mindset. I love to hike. I have seen some really cool things, and to be able to practice some gratitude for, like I just hiked up that 14er and saw some, right? So part of that respecting your body is moving away from that judgment, right?
Yeah, it's what your body does for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's what your legs do for you. It's what your arms do for you. It's, you know, what your belly does for you. And it's about, you know, how our bodies allow us to have experiences. And when we can move away from this place of like hatred and loathing and into gratitude and compassion, think about all the experiences our bodies have let us had. You know, like at the embodied love movement, what was that?
One size fits all.
One size.
Or one love fits all.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That works. Whoa.
Oops, sorry, Emily. But at the yoga event for Embodied Love Movement on just this past Sunday, Sean Korn was teaching, and she had us like look at our feet and talked about how our feet have carried us through life since the moment we were born. They have been everywhere with us, good, bad, or ugly. And that was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Our bodies have been with us since the moment we were born.
Been through probably some tough experiences.
Yeah.
Probably some cool experiences.
Yeah.
But it's carried us through. Yeah. No, it made me weep.
Yeah. So
for
I
sure.
think that's just something, you know, like we're so quick to only focus on what our body hasn't done for us or how it doesn't look a certain way instead of on everything that it has done for us.
No, I appreciate you pointing that out. And before we move in, I know we have like 2 questions. I did want to say real quick, one of the other principles I think about not using, something about with the emotions, how exactly do they
honor your feelings without using food?
Without using food. I think I just would love for listeners to know that it, you know, sometimes it's not always as simplistic as, oh, just find a healthy distraction. Just, you know, call a friend, sip some tea,
So
or whatever.
it's okay that food soothes, and it's okay that food, we use food for like emotional reasons.
Yeah, that's fine.
So for example, right, like food is celebratory. Like we have birthday cake, we have Thanksgiving feasts, we have Christmas feasts, we have like, I mean, wedding cake. Like food tends to be very celebratory, and we can have a lot of emotions tied to that, and that's okay. And if you're feeling sad or down, it's also okay to eat if that is what is going to soothe you in that moment. Sure. Here's the
caveat.
Yeah. So just like anything, if we only have one form of coping, it's probably not going to be sufficient enough and or maybe the most helpful all the time.
Yes.
So if the only way you know how to cope with an emotion or a feeling or a stressful situation is to eat, then, you know, if we think about it in this sense, like I might have had a stressful day and I go home and I have a glass of wine. That's not a bad thing. If the only way I know how to cope with stress is to go home and drink wine every single night,
right,
maybe that's not the healthiest thing for me.
Yeah. So reach out and get some support to help
absolutely.
find otherwise.
And I think because there's so many caveats to all of this is, once again, why I always think it's so helpful to reach out to support, you know, whether that's, you know, from like reading the book sometimes maybe just isn't quite enough.
Yeah. And that's okay. And it's not anything you're doing wrong. This is really hard stuff, right?
Oh my gosh.
For so many reasons that So, thank you so much for sharing those principles. I would love to transition in real quick to our Let's Chat section because we have one question.
Okay.
I love the sound. So the one question that we had was, how do you know when you're ready for intuitive eating?
Yeah. So I think that can be a complex answer to that question.
That's like our therapist default. Well, it depends.
So let me jump into that. Couple things. So if you're someone in early recovery from an eating disorder, I really think that before you launch into intuitive eating, this is something to discuss with your treatment team, your therapist, your dietitian, your doctors, because a big part of starting this process, especially when you're in recovery from an eating disorder, is sometimes the hunger cues are really off. So it's really hard to honor your hunger if you're someone who's like, I don't ever feel hungry. So I'm just honoring my hunger cues, right? Because that's something that just can get a little disrupted in an eating disorder.
Right. Okay.
So first off, let me just put that out there, because I think that's, can be really confusing, but can also be, it's just important to remember, like, you have a team. So talk to them. They know you best. Like, you've connected with them, that you're like, they are part of your treatment team. They're here for you.
Sure.
And
if you don't have an eating disorder.
So then if you're someone who's just like tired of dieting or want to try something different, here you go.
Start it, and you don't have to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
Because that's like the principle of intuitive eating is right.
There is no way to do anything perfectly. So why would we try to do intuitive eating perfectly?
Thank you.
All we can do is try.
Preach, sister, preach.
So.
Yeah. Yes. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Angela, thank you so much for your time and expertise in who you are. Where can people find you?
So my website is angelapryor.com. You can follow me on Instagram, which is, my handle is Angela Pryor LCSW. And then Facebook, Angela Pryor LLC. So, but any of those, if you go to my website, that's all on there. So you just have to remember my name.
Remember
basically.
Her name.
That's my branding. Just remember my name.
Angela Pryor. And we'll have her info in the show notes. And so with that, would love to thank our listeners for supporting us. Please find us on iTunes. We'll have this episode up probably by tomorrow. Also, you can see us on YouTube, Facebook Live, our Instagram, all Everyday Therapy Podcast. And we so thank you, and we look forward to being able to give more inspiration and tips for your everyday therapy. All right, take care, y'all.
Thank you.